For as long as there's been competitive Counter-Strike, there's been great leaders. They're the quarterbacks of the game, the ones who carry the burden of deciding its cadence, and the ones tasked with solving its mysteries while elevating those around them.
His bolt's coming through the vent, jumping down, in fact, in the middle of the side is fallen. What kind of maniac play is this? And seeing the shoulder taking down Kevin, they didn't see it coming and falling, turning around. Miraculous play.
In a game so flush with star power, it's easy for your mind to wander to the likes of Simple, Olaf Meister, or Device. But when it comes down to the steps the best players in the world take, the positions they hold, and the tactics they rely on.
Look at this position from JW. This is God tier. How the hell has he gotten here? Might be a free kill. Glaive.
No.
He surely does it. How has he read that? Glaive, you are a master.
It's the in-game leaders who so often call the shots.
It's actually turned back. Olaf Meister gets that kill. It's all down to Kerrigan, so they've got to walk in and try and get this bomb planted before he arrives. He does get Crims, but they're going to hold the bomb plant, but he actually catches off Rodax and Kerrigan. He's going to win it for TSM.
They're the linchpins of professional Counter-Strike, the brains behind the brawn. And this is their story. IGLs and the conversations that surround them and their role are the sort of cryptic underbelly of Counter-Strike. Equivalent to something like Pro Baseball's sabermetrics, they're infinitely important and at the core of every successful team. But when you're watching the action, it won't be them that will draw your eye. They're the architects of their game, virtuosos of positioning, executes, and strategy, the focus of analyst eyes from the likes of Thorin, Sponge, or Yanko. Every IGL colors the role with their own brush, from the anti-stratting style of Sean Garez to Kerrigan's roster-building prowess, from motivational leaders like Taz to ones who call while fragging with the best like Fallen. From Pronax to Blade, Golden to Stanislaw, every IGL does things a little differently. Throughout Counter-Strike's history, you can track the trajectory of its most celebrated teams through the minds of some of the game's most heralded IGLs. And that's where we're going to take you. Back to the very beginning, where what is arguably the game's most important position was first defined. The in-game leader position has more or less been under construction since the days of Counter-Strike 1.6. At its very core, a team's in-game leader has a number of responsibilities. Firstly, they have to manage the talent around them and create a system that best utilizes each player's unique skill set. They're tasked with calling strats at the start of a round, reacting to changes in play on the fly, and generally getting their team from point A to point B. IGLs are leaned on to adjust positioning in-game when something just isn't working. It's hard to start any discussion about 1.6 without uttering the name Fnatic. They won everything and redefined the way the game was played at the highest level, both with their awe-inspiring mechanics and their incredible ability to work as a team.
11 seconds, they can't even afford to engage in a fight here, they have to plant.
Oh, that was brilliantly worked again by Fnatic, and again, start off slow, but when they push back out, they just sat there. Okay, Mash, you can play slow, you have to come to us anyway.
And leading that team was Patrick Karn Satterman. Now, Karn wasn't the flashiest player on the server, but he was a lot of the brains behind the most dominant team's brawn.
And I've always been a team player, even in my real life, like sports, soccer, and all those kind of things. And somehow CS came into the picture. I think this was in '99, and one of my best friends in Sweden downloaded it, the Half-Life mod, and I just got caught. Really, I just played.
Many may look back on that Fnatic team as helping elevate CS to a new level. But what was truly special about them was how they played as one. Strategically, they were unmatched, and at the center of that was one IGL. And that format, that follow-the-leader composition, would become a fixture in CS. Of course, while Karn and Fnatic were making a name for themselves during 1.6, a player by the name of Daniil Zeus Teslenko was also beginning his storied IGL career with Natus Vincere.
And also, they get a check of a $50,000 prize money. Ladies and gentlemen, please give me again an applause for the best team of the Internet Extreme Masters Season 4 in Counter-Strike 1.6, Team Navi!
The Ukrainian organization were the perennial second fiddle to Fnatic during their heralded 1.6 dominance. They didn't have the same level of talent that their greatest rivals possessed, but many revered Zeus as a mastermind and a key to the team's success.
Then we have Zeus, who of course is the team captain and the strat caller for Navi, and again, he really stepped up his game. I can't really say that enough times when it comes to these two lineups.
Whereas Karn was celebrated for his ability to wrangle together the best players in the game, Zeus specialized at working with what he had and turned Na'Vi into a Counter-Strike powerhouse.
If they're going to win this title, they'll have to go through the best team in the world. And that's how you want a world championship to be set up.
Early on in the game's competitive legacy, names like Zeus and Karn created the framework for what we now know as a full-time, day-in, day-out position within the game's competitive landscape. But what that position has proven to be is an ever-changing puzzle. During the beginning of CSGO's competitive development, new names stepped up to take the reins as defining IGLs in a brand new game. And it was these players that ended up defining the rosters they played on and became some of the most influential players in CSGO's early days. Kevin Existence Julons was one of the game's first great analytical minds and was the leading voice behind the famed LDLC lineup that would eventually become G2 esports. He's often looked at for his ability to redefine his role as an IGL while also managing talented players like Kenny S and Shox. T-Side has often been considered the more strategy-intensive of the two roles in CS, and Existence will always be remembered for what he did to further T-Side's strategy, with impressive shot calling, planting positioning, and leadership.
His teams that played under him played fantastic CSGO, very enjoyable to watch, tactically sound. You can understand the logic of what they were doing on certain maps, the way they responded to things. The execution was at a very high level. Fantastic to watch, very aesthetically pleasing and intellectually stimulating. He was a model professional. This is a guy who's very polite. He doesn't make excuses when he loses.
While Existence's strategic mind was shining with that LDLC roster, Richard Exist Landstrom was also contributing to the role's illustrious history on Ninjas in Pajamas.
Exist is probably one of the most stable player in our team. I think he's like the core player, if I say so. Like he's the one that holds the positions. He's making calls as as the in-game leader, and I mean he always gets his frags when they're pushing onto his side. So he's also like one of the players that you really want on your team.
During the early days of CSGO, NIP were one of the most dominant teams in the game. They were a lethal, but more importantly, perfectly coordinated fragging machine.
Going in here for the kill. This is either very good or very bad. He's taken out. NIP Gaming has done it. Ladies and gentlemen, they threw a Hail Mary.
Wow.
Freiberg came in with a defuse, and that is probably the most insane comeback of 2013 so far in CSGO.
Exist proved to be a special kind of in-game leader for his ability to frag at a high level while simultaneously leading his team, something that has proven particularly difficult in any era of the game.
Exist, the current in-game leader of Ninjas in Pajamas, is a player where for CSGO fans, just for more modern day fans, it's going to be quite difficult to actually understand the full context of his career, because where he is now, the role he plays now, his level of success, his status as a player is very different from where he was for the majority of his career actually in CS 1.6.
Notably, NIP were known for shuffling the IGL duties around their roster during that era, but Exist was often looked at as the team's primary leader, and his ability to balance that role with his lethal aim puts him amongst the best IGLs to ever play. And of course, we can't forget about Kerrigan. The Danish IGL is known as one of the greatest roster builders of all time, and his leadership has helped lead Fnatic, Astralis, and FaZe Clan to world-class success.
Being a good in-game leader for a top team is really important, because we have seen in FaZe without in-game leader they can't do a playoffs before I joined, and right after we joined we did playoffs and semifinals and finals. So I think that shows that you can't just have 5 superstars players and nobody really taking the leading role. So
when Valve unveiled Counter-Strike Global Offensive in 2012, it came complete with an in-game spectator client that was specifically designed for coaches. And while it seemed like a nice quality of life upgrade for the teams, this little change would completely alter the in-game leadership role throughout the scene. As great leaders like Exist and Existence were iterating on the role, organizations were increasingly starting to use this new tool to better their in-game communication. Coaches would not only watch the games, but shot call as well in an effort to take some of the weight off the shoulders of their IGLs.
Obviously very happy for the boys winning against iBuyPower on cobblestone, so yeah, I'm a happy coach.
This was arguably best exemplified by Natus Vincer's coach, Sergei Starix Ischuk. In August 2016, Na'Vi released Zeus, their longtime in-game leader and one of their founding members, for a young superstar with jaw-dropping aim and mechanical skill.
And the desperate play into B comes in. Smokes, you see double smokes in the same place there. Simple just jumping casually into the side. He's going to fall down again. What is this clutch from Simple? Are you serious? What is that? You can't do that, Simple!
This move symbolized a major shift in the in-game leader role. Na'Vi were forgoing a player IGL for superstar power and moving the brunt of the leadership responsibility to their coach, Starix. And they weren't the only ones to do this. During that same time frame, Cloud9 replaced Slemmy for Automatic, and NIP were being completely rebuilt around their coach Threat.
I think we differ from other teams where I don't like to have a player being the opper or the lurker or anything. I just like to put players in positions where I think they will perform well.
These organizations made a statement that had been lingering on the minds of analysts for weeks. You didn't need an IGL when you could just load your roster with star power and put shot calling on the coaching staff's shoulders.
Like, I understand why they're saying that, and I can get behind it, because I think if the game wants to get to a point where a coach is the in-game leader and he does all of the stuff that I just listed and more, he in-game leads, he is the heart and soul of the team, he's the captain of the team, he does the interview duties, he does the strategies, he does the mid-round calling, he manages the money, he does all of that shit, right? He literally is an in-game leader who does not have to shoot anybody in the head. If every single team was like that, that'd be fantastic, because what you'd have is you'd have 5 players in the server who are all fantastic at their roles and jobs of fragging cunts. And that's what their job would be.
And in the short term, Na'Vi were right.
They're on the defuse! It's a championship inside smoke! Na'Vi!
But in the long term, Valve would make a change that would shake the framework of competitive Counter-Strike. They banned coaches from taking on the IGL role. Valve had made the move prior to Na'Vi's win at ESL One New York 2016, but the effects of losing Starix's in-game role had yet to make an impact on the team. But as time passed, the community felt betrayed by the position Valve put them in. Teams had spent months building their rosters around their coaches, and in one fell swoop, Valve completely changed the way the competitive scene worked. And the reaction wasn't exactly positive.
The thing that kind of confuses me, and the reason it kind of sucks that they did this now, is that over the last year, people have been getting used to coaches and developing coaches, and there hasn't been, aside from a couple conversations on the side from Valve at these majors, they haven't really said, hey guys, get ready to only have your 5.
It's a 5-player team basically that we're talking about, and then you have a 6th man, a coach. And Valve felt like the 6th man was becoming too much of a player because some teams were using him as an in-game leader instead of just having him as a cheerleader or a manager or even a coach, but a coach that's only involved in pauses, etc.
After their win in New York, Na'Vi just weren't the same team.
The complete collapse of a world-class team here. Guardian going to be going down, and it will be SK getting out of Group C here, defeating Na'Vi on train 16-8, and they won on Dust 2 as well.
Sure, they possessed the single most talented player the game had ever seen. But without Starix or Zeus in the picture, they just weren't the superpower they looked like they could be in New York. And while the Ukrainian organization's lack of leadership ended their run at the PGL Krakow Major prior to the top 8, a familiar face was making a Cinderella run.
Hobbits sitting there in connector, a dangerous position. Device knows to look out for it, misses the flick shot, and Gambit have done the unthinkable. They will be in the major finals.
After leaving Na'Vi, Zeus joined Russian org Gambit Esports, who were building toward a run at the PGL Krakow Major. They brought in Zeus in the hopes of adding some veteran leadership to their roster. And what happened next shocked the CSGO world.
Gambit have done it!
An unlikely final, but worthy of every round. What a performance from all 10 players. Everyone had their moments.
Gambit weren't the most talented team in the world, but on that day, at that tournament, they were the best. And that's what leadership means.
I just say, Olaf Meister, I love you!
And second, God helped me and I won major.
The impact of the coaching ban and the preceding shuffling of rosters and roles was one of the major stories in CSGO throughout 2016. The way organizations were looking to assemble talent was changing, and it all ventured around the IGL position. We saw FaZe Clan choose one of those extremes over the course of 2017 when they assembled what was possibly the most star-studded roster in CS history under the gaze of legendary IGL Kerrigan.
Robin has said he's been looking for a long time for a guy who could lead the team inside the server instead of lead as a coach, because that is hard to be an example and leading as a coach compared to in-game and showing how it needs to be done.
But even with Kerrigan and after adapting to the impact of the coaching ban, FaZe has only shown flashes of brilliance.
In the nades rain. The Arsenal toward the firebox in hope of a kill. All in one position, and Guardian makes it just Nitro to find the flash! And Nico fittingly gets the last kill as FaZe dominate New York in 2017 in the Barclays Center all the way through this tournament.
These days, while we're watching the various in-game leader situations across the best teams in the world, from FaZe to Nautis Vincer to Fallen and MIBR, one thing is consistent: Astralis.
And now for the first time ever at home, Season 8, Astralis are the champions of ESL Pro League, and for the first time in history, the best of all fucking time, Intel Grand Slam, it's Astralis!
There's no question that we're in the era of Astralis. During the 2018 and 2019 CSGO seasons, we've watched as they've proven time and time again to be one of the best teams in CS history.
Wow, it's finally happened, James. I think this era might last for a very long time. All right, London, let's hear it for Astralis!
Nobody can touch these guys. They are not on another level. They are on another planet.
There's been a lot made about what makes Astralis so good, but at the center of every conversation is Lucas Glaive Rosander.
If the team is playing good tactically, that is when they shine, that is when they show consistency, that is when their star players is starting to rise. So I think the IGL and the team play and the communication and the things that IGL understands and makes his players do is one of the most important things in the game.
The Danish team's in-game leader has crafted the unbelievable depth of map pool and strategic dominance that the team has become widely known for. It was the addition of Glaive in place of Kerrigan that jump-started the Astralis team we know now.
So what changed about Astralis when they got Glaive into the lineup as the in-game leader is this was someone who not only could harness the players in his team, which was always some of the best players, not only could develop a good offensive side, a good CT side, not only could do all the basics, but the key element was he brought the final piece of the philosophy that has allowed the team to have this level of success they've had.
And while doing so, he's done what few have ever achieved, fragging at the level of the rest of his team while leading them.
They've all been neutralized just by the flames, but that's a good entry. But they're all so low, and Glaive gonna get another one, and he's gonna finish it off.
After the community was sent reeling in the wake of the coaching ban, Astralis has taught us a lot about what it takes to be among the best in Counter-Strike. Many of the world's biggest names were brought together, but it was the Danish cohorts that were able to surpass the competition by playing the kind of Counter-Strike that's only possible with absolutely perfect teamwork, leadership, and execution.
If you look at Zonic and Glaive, what he can bring strategically, what he can bring motivational, that relationship has really allowed that team to kind of skyrocket. And eventually, that pairing, a team and a coach understanding of what their role is and being defined is going to lead to new strides.
Within the confines of just this one position, we're told a story of professional Counter-Strike, of the early days of solving puzzles, to the refined machine of modern esports, and one wrench in the plans that turned the CS world on its head. But inside the world of the in-game leader, we see the beauty of esports, what's beneath the surface of quickly ending rounds, spray patterns, and crosshairs. The hours spent face-to-face behind the scenes, player to player and coach to coach, solving the game, trying to break it. Like Astralis on Nuke or Old Fnatic on Inferno. There is no dominance without leadership. Thanks for watching. If you want more great content just like this, be sure to hit the subscribe button.